Alright, hi ladies and gentlemen, my name is Trisha and I am here with Insectopia to look at some insects with you. Now, I'm not sure how many of you are out there right now. I don't have any interest in the chat right now, so I'm hoping that some of you guys are going to join me in a little bit. We'll see. Whether or not, I figured we would just sketch this Rove beetle right here. So, Rove beetles are in the family Staphylinidae, and we had talked a little bit about Rove beetles. Oops. Let me go ahead and fix that. Alright, so we talked about Rove beetles, let's see, back when we were talking about carrion beetles, because when we were talking about the carrion beetles, we were talking about how they've been moved. They used to have their own family, but they've been kind of smushed as a subfamily of Rove beetles. And then I realized we hadn't sketched Rove beetles yet, or really looked and talked about their behaviors and all of those types of things. So, I'm going to see if I zoom out all the way, if I can get this Rove beetle into the microscope frame. It looks like no. It was so close. Nope, can't get it into frame. So I'm going to go ahead and take my Rove beetle off of the microscope really quick and measure it down here on my table camera. Alright, for those of you who like to make sure that your sketches have scale bars, our Rove beetle looks to be about 1.6 centimeters. Alright, so that is going to be your length on this guy. Rove beetles. Rove beetle is the common name for this guy. The scientific name would be Staphylinidae. And sometimes people ask, you know, what do these guys eat and where do they live? Well, you can find Rove beetles all over the planet. They're a huge family of insects, but a lot of times where you're going to be finding them is in the woods, underneath logs, or underneath rocks. They are most of the time predatory, so they're going to be eating very small insects like mites and collembola, springtails, and eggs of sorts, fleas. There are some staphylinids, there are some Rove beetles that have mutualistic relationships with mammals. So they'll kind of hang out with the mammals and they will eat any fleas that they get. So that's a little bit about staphylinids, or these Rove beetles here. I figured we should sketch a beetle because we've been sketching a lot of specialty stuff. We sketched I think a scorpion fly on Thursday, and we sketched some moths, and we sketched some other things, but there's a part of me that loves beetles and checking out all of their different little parts, and I feel like, for me, they're one of the easier insects to sketch. Welcome, Nancy! Alright, so let me go ahead and get this down on paper real quick. We've got a Rove beetle, and their scientific name is Staphylinidae. Alrighty, so we got that all taken care of. Now, there's a couple of fun things that while I'm going ahead and getting I'm going to start getting the basic outline of our Rove beetle taken care of. This is just a super light outline of the head, the mid-region, the thorax, the abdomen, and some segmentation just so that I can kind of get the specimen lined up on the paper. And I'm going to tell you a story about rove beetles. So my head is going to be kind of a rounded box shape. Alright, so when I was a youngin', when I was a kid, I probably have a couple of rove beetle stories. The first one would probably be I was outside playing and I was looking for bugs. I was, playing around in the dirt, probably flipping over rocks and flipping over logs in the log pile and whatnot. And I saw this beetle, and it was awesome, but it was a little bit scary because its abdomen was curled up like this, and it was pulled, kind of curled up and around, and there, your first gut instinct, even as a kid, is to think, oh no, it's a scorpion. But, we knew that. My friends and I, we knew that it couldn't be a scorpion, right? Because we're in Michigan and there aren't any scorpions here. So I think it's kind of funny because rove beetles have that behavior where they pull their abdomen up and over their body a little bit just so that they can kind of look like a scorpion. And that day, they definitely convinced us. So that's one story about rove beetles. Rove beetles also can be bioluminescent, just like fireflies. So I'm going to go bug buddies. Yeah, exactly. So let's see. I've got some basic shapes happening here. I've got my head. I gave myself some 2 little circles for those eyes. I'm going to be adding lots of features up here. This is my pronodum, that first segment of the thorax. It's where the first pair of legs are going to be connected. And then if we go a little bit further back, these are the elytra. And on rove beetles, the elytra, the wings, are super, super short. Alright, so a lot of times beetle wings, their elytra, go all the way to the bottom of the abdomen to protect the entire body. Rove beetles don't need all that protection. They just have little itty bitty hard shells. So they only cover maybe a couple segments of the abdomen, and then most of the abdomen is actually exposed to the natural world. And you may be surprised, but even though their wings, even though their elytra are very short, they still have hind wings underneath those that are kind of all curled up and folded up in a way that they can open up their wings and still fly. So the rove beetles have a very complex way of kind of folding their wings up and underneath these 2 shells. Alright, I'm going to move the microscope down. There we go. I just wanted to be able to see my abdomen. Come into focus. There we go. Sometimes it takes a little bit further to come into focus than I expected. Look at that. You can see all of the hairs on the abdomen. Oh, man. This is exciting. So, let's see. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and get some more of these abdominal segments taken care of. It looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 abdominal segments. I believe that's pretty common for rove beetles. I think they generally have like 5 to 7 abdominal segments that you can see underneath the elytra. We might flip the specimen over and see if there's an extra segment or 2 underneath. But what we can see is 6. 6. Alright. And I still need to come up with a good name for the fly with the arrow that helps point at body parts. I'm giving myself kind of a longer thin abdomen at first, very light, and then as I come back in, I'm going to have to make some of those kind of distinct segments at the end. But I just wanted to make sure I had about the right shape and then about the right size, and I'll worry about breaking that up later. And I might end up making the head a lot smaller. It looks like my head's a little too big for its body now. That's fine. That's what we do. Alright, so if I was going to be giving my Rove beetle legs and all of its appendages, I would be going ahead and giving it its first leg would be in that type of realm, right? The second pair of legs would be coming out around here and would be moving backward. And then the third pair of legs would be probably coming out like that some way. And so we'll see about what those look like. Alrighty. Now, that's a lot of times how I'm going to start my illustrations or start my sketches, with the super light kind of outline of the basic shapes. But then when we go ahead, I'm going to turn off this camera down here, and we're going to zoom in on the head. We're going to check out some features. Rove beetle, what does your head look like? I remember my bug buddies and I, we had collected a Rove beetle, and we had it in a container, and we had just identified it in the National Audubon Society's book, and it was one of those Rove beetles that had the bioluminescence on the end of the abdomen. I was so excited, and we were playing with it on the gazebo, and it got out of its cage somehow and crawled down in between the slats of the gazebo and was gone to us forever. It was a sad day. This is a really awesome head, by the way. I'm checking out some of these features. These antennae are really awesome. They're expanded to look like they kind of almost have clubs at the end, but the clubs are maybe 4 segmented, or you might consider 5 segmented because of the distinction of the color of the hairs. So right here you would say 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 segmented club on the end of this antenna. You've got the 2 compound eyes here and here, and then if you've seen this part here that comes around and is sharp on that end, and then this piece here that comes around sharp on that end, those are the mandibles. That's where my Rove beetle is going to be chewing on its prey, and it's going to be probably attacking other insects. These are mouth fingers. These are those labial palps. They help kind of push food towards the mandibles and make sure that my beetle has the ability to kind of swallow all that foods. The head looks a little bit like an ant. I guess that's fair. You know, you can see it's kind of square and it's got these eyes, but ants are going to have elbowed antennae, right? So they're going to have a longer flagellum. That first segment is really, really long, and all of the other ones are short. All ants are going to have elbowed antennae. Up close nothing looks like an ant. That's funny. I would say up close. I don't know. Never mind. Alright, so we've got all of that taken care of. Good. I think that's pretty well in focus for what we need to see right now. Maybe we can get in a little bit closer. I like it just like that. So, we're going to go ahead and sketch our head. And I'm going to zoom out just really quick because I want to see the comparison between the head and the elytra really quick. It occurred to me that I might want to make my head a little bit smaller, and I want to make sure I'm doing that right. Yeah, my head's going to be about half of the size that it was before, I think. Yeah, we need a name for the pointer guy. That's not... Somebody suggested calling him Mr. Dippy. And I mean, I think it's kind of cute, but also it might be kind of mean for our friend. I want him to have a cute name. Mr. Fly, that sits on your shoulder. And alright, I think that that's going to be closer to what I'm looking for. The head's just a little bit smaller. I think that that works a lot better. Alright, now I'm ready to zoom in on the head. So I think after I finish up with this sketch, I'm going to be going out into a local park, going to hike around a little bit. I'm going to see if I can find a couple... there's a couple of metallic blue beetles that I think I'm going to see if I can go and look for. They're little leaf beetles. But a little bit later today, probably around 9 p.m. Eastern, probably around 9 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to be back on camera because I really need to pin up some of my insects. I need to pin up some of my butterflies and some of my beetles. I'm a little bit behind, and now that I have a good number of butterflies that are in envelopes and need to be spread, I think it's a good night to do it. Alright, so I'm looking at my head, and I'm going to make sure that I give my head all of these very round angles. I think that the first time I sketched it, it was kind of square. So I'm going to come back in and I'm going to start rounding off some of these shapes. And I can use where I kind of see my lines from before for the sizing. Alright. So I've got this head kind of coming up rounded and then becoming a little bit more narrow at the front than it is in the back, right? And then it kind of has this very even horizontal break on the end of the head. Now, that's also where the mouth parts are going to start. So you can see up here in the front, let's see. Up here in the front, you can see that there's this like little gold line. That's about where I am. That's about where this line is that I'm sketching. I'm trying to make it straight. That's about where this is. And then I'm going to go up one segment and make that just a little thinner than the next. And so that's that little gold line. And then we have a bunch of mouth parts here. We've got a bunch of different things happening. I'm going to... We're going to need to zoom in on the mouth parts, I think, to finish that up. So I'm going to put my eyes on our head here, and then put the antennal sockets, and then we'll zoom in on those mouth parts. So those compound eyes are fairly large, but they're not taking up the entire head like some other insects might, right? They do kind of go off of the edge of the head, so you can, this one is a little bit kind of in, you can make sure that those eyes kind of touch on the edge of the head, because then they're kind of wrapping around the head. So we've got our head taken care of. Just think it's too wide. All right. I think my Rove beetle is about to go off, will be off of the page by the end of our sketch. I can see it happening. All right, so I'm looking at my antenna. I'm gonna go ahead and give my antenna bases. So those are gonna be right here at the front of the head, between the eye and the mouth parts. Now we know that first segment of the antenna has its own special name that's called the flagellum. Even though it is considered a segment on the antenna. So if you ever hear someone say an insect has 7 segmented antenna, that includes the flagellum and the pedicel, which is the next little segment that has its own name, right? After you go from there, you have the rest of these segments that we call the flagellum, and these are generally are going to be very similar in shape, unless it's unless the specific kind of antenna calls for it otherwise. Like this right here, all of these segments are very similar, and then you get to the end, and this is a clubbed antenna. So these segments make up your club. All right, so let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm looking at these segments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 segments before we get into this different texture in the club. And those are the segments that reach all the way back about to the eye. So that's what I'm going to be trying to aim for 5 segments. Alright, so I have 5 segments there, and then I believe it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 5. So it's 5 segments on this club here. Now, this club, I would say it starts about here, because you can see it kind of starts the cup here, and then it goes for 1, 2, 3, 4... and then it finishes up. So you can see that these segments are nice and thin, and then when it gets to the end, these segments kind of get really wide. Alrighty, next side. 1. is going to look a little bit more controlled than my right side. I think that this is probably a better view of that antenna with that nice kind of even club. This side is having a little bit of problem with keeping that club even. Let me see if I can go one more time. That's a little better. Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and zoom in on those mouth parts because those are really fun looking. Oh no! Dope. Alright, let's check out these mouth parts. So, some of you were laughing a little bit last Thursday because the labrum had lots of hairs and it looked like the beetle had a mustache. That's the same with this staphylinids. You can see that labrum, that upper lip, has all of those hairs. And as we zoom down past those hairs, you can see the next thing that comes into focus are those mandibles, those nice sharp points. They are overlapping one another like this, and so you can see their points coming out on either side. They don't meet directly in the middle. And then, if we focus even further, those are the labial palps. Those are my mouth fingers that they use to kind of push food towards their mouth. They don't get spoons and forks, so they need something to help push food towards their face. I accidentally put my finger through my tulip moth. I've got to glue its wing back on now. It makes me sad. It was in the wrong place. I missed my microscope and grabbed the moth. Alright. So we need to get this labrum here, which is our upper lip. Then we've got all of those nice long hairs that are coming off of the labrum. So I always like to go ahead and give some of those hairs. Now after that, what we could see were those mandibles. And so I make sure that the mandibles are at least, you pick one to go on top. So I'm going to choose the right one to go on top. And then the left one, I just give this little line at the base, and then I finish it over here on this side. So you can see that they're nice and crossed like that. I might have to start the other mandible a little bit further out, I think. Alright, the mandibles don't point out as much, so I wanted to make sure that they were pretty even and pretty low to the mouth part. And then the other thing we need to get in here and sketched are those labial palps. It looks like they are about 4 segmented, so we're going to go in and go 1, 2, 3, 4 on one side, and 1, 2, 3, 4 on the other side. So we've got those labial palps taken care of. We've got these eyes sketched in. We have the antenna. I think that we're pretty good with the head. Let's go ahead and... Yeah, I know. It's a sad day for my tulip moth. They're pretty common to the Philadelphia region, so I might just be collecting myself another one. Alright, the Pronodum actually has a very shield-like shape. If you imagine, like, or at least when I imagine the shields back in the day when they were kings and queens in Europe, I imagine a shield that looks very similar to what you're looking at on the Rove beetle. So coming down from the head, making sure that we've got that little bit of a neck area. Yeah, right about like that. And then giving us this shield. My Rove beetle is going to be way too big for the paper. I tried to keep it small. Alright. I'm going to start with a shield that has a top that's flat, and then I'm going to go ahead and add the angles once I get the size right. That's about right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and we've got this, and then it's going to come up and then go back down. Alrighty. Around the edges of the pronotum, we might call them the pronodal margins. A lot of times we call the edges the margins of things. So if you look around the margins, you can see that they've got kind of golden hair. So if you want to go ahead and give yourself some little hair along the edges, that will also define that the top of the pronodal shield is glossy or very smooth without all of these hairs. Alright, and then we're going to shift down into our elytra. Now, I think that this is going to be where my sketch is really going to take a shift, because I believe the elytra are a lot longer than I had first sketched. So, if you look, my elytra look to be approximately, let's say, 1.5 for the pronotum. Trying to keep this even for everyone so we can all see it. But the elytra are definitely longer than that pronodal shield. So maybe more like 1.3. But I'm going to leave that up for a minute so that we can look at that. We're going to go ahead and look at that. So, I've got my pronotum here. And then my elytra, they're going to be coming out right around this area. So it's going to be coming out on around about the bottom of our shield shape. And then you do have these shoulders where they come out and then it rounds down really quickly. So you've got these very shouldered elytra. You also have, if you follow this angle down and then this angle down, and in just a little bit, that is the scutellum, this triangle right in here. Right here, this triangle right in there, that is the scutellum of our Rove beetle. It sits between the elytra. I just like to point it out because it's one of those main characteristics. We see on pretty much every beetle and fly, and we see them prominent on cockroaches and many, many insects. So they're worth being able to point out and notice, especially when we're looking at insects under microscopes. All right, so coming out, the elytra don't just go straight down, they go out just a little bit. So I want to make sure that my elytra are going out just a little bit. And I'm taking and I'm estimating, let's just go ahead and do it. I'm estimating I sketched about 3, so time and a half would be 4 and a half. Yeah. Me, myself, and I are going to need more paper for the abdomen. Maybe I will put the abdomen next to it. I just couldn't stop myself. The characters on the head, they just kept getting larger and larger, even though I kept saying I need to draw it smaller. Oh, man. Alright, so this is going to be our overall shape for our elytra. They, to me, look just a little bit long. I think I want them to end more like here. I'm happy with that. Alright, so I'm going to round these out at the edges here and here. Alright, and then we do have some really... Yes, exactly. Nancy, the Scutum is spelled exactly the way you spelled it. Alright, is that the base where the wings open from? The Scutum is here. It's mostly like, it's not where the wings are connected. The wings are actually connected, you're going to laugh, to the first segment of the thorax. So they're connected to the Pronodum. But they've got a lot of wings in or muscles in the thorax. The Scutum is just the piece of the exoskeleton that sits in between the wings. I believe it's on the second segment of the thorax. No problem. So I wanted to zoom in and check out some of this really beautiful texture on my Rove beetle. You can see that he has patches in areas that don't have hair, and he's got patches of long, beautiful golden hair. So if you look right about here, you can see all those beautiful golden insect hairs. We call insect hair CD. Alright, so that's what we call our insect hair that you can see here. It's beautiful. Alright, I'm going to make sure that I'm getting my sketch taken care of, and I'm going to go ahead and give some of these hairs USB cam. There it is. Alright, so this gives us an idea of the patterning of the hairs on the elytra, and that may be important for the identification of the species, but most of the time for Rove beetles, we just have to see that the elytra are significantly shorter than the abdomen. They're one of the only beetle families that have these very, very, very short elytra. I was hoping that if we zoomed in at the base of the elytra, we were going to be able to see some of the membranous wings tucked underneath. Kind of a little bit. So if you look right about here, you can see what looks like kind of a clear piece of cellophane or a clear piece of plastic. That is actually the hind wing. It's folded up underneath the elytra, but there's a little bit of it sticking out. And you can also see right about here, there's that really pretty golden ridge. That's one of the veins on the hind wing. And when this opens up, that's going to be one of the veins that helps unfold and unfurl to help open up those entire set of hind wings that they have tucked underneath these two little elytra. I've always thought that they looked a little bit like they had like a rocket pack on, because, you know, they're not super long. It's not like they're wings. They have wings that are folded and tucked up inside of like a little backpack. Alright, now this is going to be fun because I think I'm only going to be able to fit about 3 segments of the abdomen before I run out of paper. Watch me do that. Alright, so I've got my head, my pronodum, my elytra, my scutellum, and we're moving down here to the abdomen. There are 6 visible segments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 5 are very plate-like, and they look like they can fit into one another. The 6th one is a lot thinner. And then we have some protrusions at the end, way down here. We'll have to zoom in to check out what those are. I do know that there are some Rove beetles that kind of look like earwigs, so I wonder if some Rove beetles have those kind of modified to be a little bit longer. Alright, let's try this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I was so close to getting the whole thing in. If I had scooted it up, I just need to, if we were sketching on a computer, I would just select all and scoot it all up about a ½ an inch. Oh, let's see if I can, you know what, I might be able to create some magic here. Without throwing the ratio off too much. I think it's gonna work. Yeah! It just needs those little butt hairs down there. Those are gonna be missing, unfortunately. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and give us some of these lines. pretty happy with that. Look at that. We got pretty much the entire beetle on the piece of paper. Oh, man. All right. It took a little bit of concentration, but I got it all figured out. We got those lines to make it work. And now we can add some of this coloration to it. Let me go ahead. I'm erasing some of my sketch lines to make it just a little bit cleaner. There we go. And you can see how each one of these segments starts a little bit inside. That's just because I'm actually going to fluff that out a little bit. You can see that in our sketch that he's got hairs on the ends of every single one of these, on the ends of every one of these. We would call them sclerites or abdominal segments. I know. We have a variety of watchers on Thursday nights that is obsessed with talking about insect butts. And so we have a good time. I'm going ahead and using my pencil to sketch out the longer hairs that are yellow, because they're the color that's not, I'm kind of like assuming black and sketching other colors. And so if I'm looking at this, the hairs are going to start up here on the first abdominal segment, and they're going to kind of curl down just a little bit on the second segment on the edges. And then the third segment is actually going to be mostly golden hairs all the way up here on the edges. And then the rest of the segments are going to be just a little bit around some of the edges and at the end of the abdominal segments. Now, each one of these individual kind of pieces of the exoskeleton, we call them Sclerites. That is spelled this way. All right. So it looks like we've got our hair taken care of on our abdomen. We have our elytra, the scutellum, the pronodum, all of those head features. We are making it somewhere, guys. If you want, I could zoom in on the end of that abdomen, but I don't have the ability to sketch the end. So what I'm going to do is focus on a leg, because we haven't looked at any of these legs yet, and I would really like to see if there's any types of fun features that we can talk about there. Let's go ahead and check that out. Welcome, our new viewer. Feel free to drop your location in the chat. If you have any questions about rove beetles or other bugs, let me know. I'm just looking to see this first leg. It looks like I'm going to be taking the labels off of my specimen and turning it upside down so that we can check out some of these leg features. Because as an entomologist, there are two types of pinners in the world. There are tuckers and there are spreaders. And generally, I'm a fan of tucking the insects that I pin, just so that they are a little bit safer in museum collections. So scientifically, if we have all those legs and all of those antennae kind of tucked into the body, there's a less likely chance of them breaking while they're being moved in a museum or while they're being moved from space to space, right? So I like to tuck, although it makes it a little difficult to sketch from sometimes because you've got to kind of see around those features. All right, so we are looking at the front leg. This right here is what we call the coxa. That's kind of my insect's hip bone. It's, excuse me, spelled like this. We have a little itty-bitty kneecap down here that we don't have the ability to see that's called a trochanter, but the rest of these little segments on the leg actually have very similar names to human bones. The first segment is the femur, and then the second segment is the tibia, right? So it's like from the hip to the knee and the knee to your foot. Once you get to the end, we call these tarsal segments. Rove beetles, let me check really quick on their exact tarsal formula. But I believe it's, yeah. So Rove beetles have a 5-5-5 tarsal formula, and that means that when I'm looking at the number of segments on my tarsi, there's going to be 5 segments on the front, 5 segments on the middle, and 5 segments on the hind leg. All right, so 5 on each. Now, we are going to be sketching our legs from a dorsal point of view, even though we're looking at them from a ventral point of view, right? So there's going to be a little bit of reimagining happening. I'm just going to say Rove beetle up here. All right, like for instance, we can't see the coccyx from the top, but we are going to be able to see probably, let's see, some of the femur. We're going to be able to see some of the femur, all of the tibia, and then the tarsal segments. So that leg is going to come out looking like this on both sides, but a lot of times when I'm sketching with you guys, I only end up sketching one set of legs. I know a lot of you have time to sketch both sides, but I have movement and microscopes to things to do. So that's about what my middle leg, or my front leg, is going to look like. My middle leg, we can see an example. Maybe we can't. Maybe we're going to have to move it really quick. All right, so if we scooch our specimen back just a little bit, you can see that the middle leg is right here. The femur, the tibia, and then the tarsal segments are right here. And so our front and our middle legs, the bases, the coccyx of those legs are very, very close to one another. Whereas the hind legs, they come out way down here. And so the hind legs are going to be coming out way at the end of the thorax. And so we'll be looking at how that affects our sketch from the top. So let's see. Activate. There we go. All right, so I'm just making these little kind of very, very light leg sketches to kind of imagine where these pieces are going to be now. So I've got my front leg. Now my middle leg, we know, came very, very close, but it's going to be coming out in the other direction. So to make it easier on myself, I think that, you know what, it is going to come out a little higher. So my middle leg is going to be coming out, it's going to probably look like it's coming out between the Pronodum and the elytra, right about here. And so that's going to be the approximate shape of our middle leg. But then our hind leg is actually going to be coming out way down here. And that's because, remember, there was that huge gap. So that gap is right here. And then your coccyx is going to be right about here underneath your wing. And then you're going to see a little bit of femur. You're going to see tibia and then tarsal segments. And so that that large gap right there, you can see that if my beetle had all 6 of its legs up here, it would be kind of bottom heavy, right? Or like it would feel like dragging its abdomen. But having its hind leg a little bit further back is going to help kind of balance out its body weight and give it the ability to run. And it's a predator, right? So it's gonna have to run. It has to sometimes chase after its prey, or at least be quick. Rove beetles do go after springtails, and those guys jump, right? So I'm going to go ahead and start building some of these segments out. Now, I'm going to say the tibia looks like it starts very narrow and becomes kind of wide at the end. So instead of having kind of an oval shape, you're making this like extended triangular shape. It also looks like there were some spines and features on the tibia, and those are on the outside of the tibia. So if you want to go ahead and add some spines, you can add those to the outside edge of your tibia. And then you have 5 tarsal segments. And I think we can zoom in on the tarsal segments, or at least one of them, because the Rove beetles are going to have 5, 5, 5, so every single set of tarsi are going to be exactly the same. I want to see if there is a, which one is the most viewable. This one. It's a little bit dark, but it is what I have for us right now. That's a little bit better. All right, so this is an example of the tarsi of a Rove beetle. So these are those toe segments, and you can see right about here, this is the end of the tibia. It does look like it's going to have one kind of sharp tibial spur on the inside that's longer than all of the others. And then it's got 5 segments, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a longer one, 5 with 2 claws on the end. And so each one of its tarsi are going to have this exact same kind of look, the same formula. Although I believe the hind leg, the segments are going to be a lot more expanded because they need to be able to kind of off-balance these other two. So let's see. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Tarsal segments. Alright. And then we're going to do the same for my hind leg. And then on the outside, wait. We want to make sure that this goes from narrow to wide, not the other way around. That's better. Alright, so we've got that middle leg taken care of. I'm going to go ahead and add some hairs and some spines on the outside. Give myself 1 longer tibial spur on the inside. 5 tarsal segments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I remember reading in the Audubon book as a child, I remember reading that Rove beetles eat detritus, and I had no idea what detritus was, and I tried to look it up, and I don't think I was getting very many good answers. I don't remember being able to figure out what detritus was. And so when I finally learned that detritus was just dead and dying plant material, I was like, all right, that makes sense. But sometimes detritus can also be like dead, not just dead and decaying plant material, but every now and again you can also add animal material into that too. Because Rove beetles are going to pretty much eat anything that's dead and dying. And you do see Rove beetles at dead animals also. They are a part of the decomposition process. Alright, so I just wanted to be able to look at some of these tarsal segments on the hind leg. You can see that the second segment is just a little bit longer in this set than previous sets. So I wanted to show you that while we were sketching just to make sure. And I'm going to go ahead and make my tibia nice and wide at the base. Make his leg nice and long because he's got to be able to hold up his weight. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2 little claws. pause. And that, my friends, is a Rove Beetle. Oh, my Rove Beetle makes me really happy. I was really afraid when it was going to run off of the paper that I wasn't going to love him, but I do. I love him. I think that his eyes could probably be played with a little bit, but overall, I think I'm pretty happy with the little fella. One of these days, I'm going to go back into my sketches, and I'm going to print them so that I'm not messing up the originals, and I'm going to color them, and I'm going to practice coloring them. I'm really excited about it. So, good. I'm glad. He makes me happy, Mr. Rove Beetle. Alright, so, that was about an hour with me. I'm going to go ahead and get these labels back on my Rove Beetle. Since the beginning, since starting live streaming, I think I've only forgotten to put the labels back on twice. So I have 2 insects in my collection that don't have labels, but I have the labels. I just don't know exactly which one goes to which, and I'd hate to mislabel one of my specimens. So right now, I just have 2 unlabeled specimens. Silly me. Alright, so those are Rove Beetles. I think they're great. Some people even have, some people have reared Rove Beetles in captivity. I think that they like to feed on things like cat food and dog food because those things are high in protein and high in nutrition. Alright, so I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your day. I hope you enjoyed sketching this Rove Beetle with me and checking out all of these wonderful characteristics and all of those really long golden hairs. I didn't really mention those on the abdomen. We didn't really zoom in on them, but look how beautiful they are. I think it's awesome. So, I want to say thank you for hanging out with me today. There are all of these different links available to you. This is where I teach kids. This is to remind you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and that is your ability to leave me a tip and let me know that you've had a good time watching this video and that you had a great time interacting with me during this chat or after, right? So if you got to sit around and you've spent the last hour sketching along with me and learning, feel free to leave me a tip for appreciation. I super appreciate it. I know a lot of you have already done so, and I love you for it. Alright, so I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. I will see everyone on Thursday. Oh, and I will be back, hopefully, around 9 p.m. I'm pretty sure that's when I'm going to be back live. Just around 9, and I'm going to be able to go ahead and start pinning some bugs, and we're going to look at spreading some butterflies and stuff. So if you want to come back then, I would super appreciate it. Alright, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Good night.